Lassie Lou Ahern was a child star in the silent films of the 1920s.
My father had the real estate agency, and one day who should appear at his door but Will Rogers. Mr. Rogers asked him if he had time to take him out around, that he was interested in property. So one day he said, "Fred, have you ever taken your girls over to the studio? I think your kids are cuter than anything I've seen." And we looked interesting. And lo and behold, both my sister and I were chosen. So that's how that happened.
Lassie Lou went on to act in many silent films during the 1920s. Her film debut was in 1923 at the age of 18 months in Jack London's Call of the Wild, produced by Hal Roach. Lassie Lou then appeared in many Our Gang comedies: Derby Day, Cradle Robbers, Jubilo Jr., The Sundown Limited, Fast Company, and Thundering Fleas. Will Rogers featured Lassie Lou in 5 of his films, including Going to Congress. Charlie Chase, one of the most well-known comedians of his time, featured her in many of his films, including Sweet Daddy and Family Entrance. Lassie Lou also performed in many of the Helen Holmes serials and acted in Robes of Sin and Surrender.
I was 5. I was working on the Roach lot, and one day my dad got a call from my agent, and he said, "Fred, have you heard anything about Uncle Tom's Cabin?" They've got the biggest child role for Eliza's son, little Harry, and they've been interviewing boys for weeks. They have not found one yet. Why don't you take Lassie down to Los Angeles and get her a little suit and have her use your name? I was nervous going over because saying a different name and all of that. Finally, I got up, my turn to go in, and I went in, and they said, "Well, hello there, young man." And I said, "Hello." And he said, "Do you know anything about Uncle Tom's Cabin?" I said, "No." And he said, "Well, we're making this big picture, and we need a little boy that can do a lot of things, because sometimes it's happy times and sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's very sad because they're going to steal this child away from his mother." And so he says, could you cry on camera? I mean, and I smiled and I turned around like that. And then I turned around, I held my hands out to Mrs. Fisher. I didn't do it to him. And I, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy, help me, help me, help." Oh, and I just cried and went on like that. And Mrs. Fisher got up and she picked me up, and she says, she looked at him and said, "Look what you did." This is the funny part. And he looked at her, he says, "What have we been doing here for weeks and weeks? We want somebody that can cry because we have to have a lot of it done in it." And she said, oh, she got a sheepish look on her face. "Oh, I know." But it was like it was so real, is what she would have said. So he says, "Come here. Yes, you can cry. I see that." And he says, "You're not a boy, are you?" The words of death, you know. And I looked at him right in the eye and I says, "No." He got up, walked to the door, opened it, stuck his head out, and said, "Thank you all for coming, but I found my little Harry." That's how I knew I had the part.
And she won the New York Film Critics Award for Best Child Actor. 1929's Little Mickey Grogan was Lassie Lou's last silent film, and the only film to feature her in a starring role, alongside Frankie Darro. Lassie Lou and her sister Peggy then toured the United States, dancing and performing music in nightclubs and hotels during the 30s and 40s.